Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Cynthia Henry, and I'm the librarian for the College of Human Sciences and Education this semester. We had our education librarian get a new job, and so we're hiring this semester. So I'm covering both of those. Because of my colleges, they were kind of looking at data visualization. So I started to learn Tableau, and that's what we're going to learn today is Tableau. It's a data visualization software, if you will. And we're going to start out on this page. So if you have this open, that'd be great. I'm actually going to download this PowerPoint because I forgot to download it before my prep. And then we'll reverse those. Well, that's interesting. It won't reverse. Let's see here if I can make that happen. Oh, I know what I can do. Okay. Well, this is fascinating. Sorry, guys, I didn't think that would be such a trouble. We're just gonna psych PowerPoint out and here. I don't really like doing this view, but it will be better than fiddling with that, I guess. Okay, so here we are in a rough sketch here of Tableau. What we're going to do today is kind of do the overview of Tableau, learn some Tableau terminology, because I think it has some unique words that you don't really see in other software. Then we're going to work through some data visualization projects, do several different kinds of charts and graphs and stuff, and then actually put that together in a platform where you can see it as one if you want. And then we're going to move through some other data, kind of with y'all leading a little bit more, and we'll do that. Okay, so Tableau is a free program that is online. You can get to that at Tableau Public here, or also from this. If you haven't created a Tableau Public account, I encourage you to do that now. It won't take you but a second to do. Although sometimes they don't send the email immediately because you have to verify the email. And so some of the limits on Tableau Public is that it only supports data sets of up to 15 million rows. I know that sounds like a lot of data, but when you really start looking at some of this data, you'll realize that's going to go by fast. So like some big sets would be retail data. So you have multiple SKUs there for multiple sizes for different colors. And so that ends up taking a lot of information. So it also currently can use Excel, Google Sheets, CSV, or MS Access. Now, MS Access is a product from Microsoft where you can build a database. So the publishing limits, you can only save work to the web, and it's only up for 10 gigabytes storage per account. I don't think you'll run through that very fast, but if you do, you can always use the other platform. And currently, they used to only make Tableau Public available where you could have your data there for others to be able to download. And now you can toggle a switch off where you can not let other people download your data, but it will be viewable online. So then we're kind of talking about what is appropriate to put there. make sure that you're not putting any confidential data there. So if you have anything that's confidential, I would not put it in Tableau Public. So the next platform is Tableau Desktop. Now this allows you to save your files to your computer. We're going to all be in Tableau Public today, but you have access to Tableau Desktop as well. It allows you to save your files to your computer. It has additional data connection options like databases or cloud services. Like I think it will sync up with our OneDrive if that is something like maybe you're storing a lot of data from a research project on campus, then you can pull it in from OneDrive. Students are allowed to have a 1-year renewable license, and they just make sure that you're still a student. And so this is where you would get that information. Teaching and non-commercial academic research. I think ours are 3-year license. And so at the end of that 3 years, you would have to sign up for that. Now, but let's talk about that. Teaching, I could teach this to y'all, and that's okay at the academic research. But if I happen to be, let's say, in the recruiting department on campus and wanting to use this platform for recruiting materials, that would not be applicable because that would be for-profit kind of research, or not necessarily research, but activities. So you have to make sure you're only using this in the classroom or presenting it to, people in an academic setting. Okay, so what can Tableau make? It can make all these kinds of different charts. And if you don't know all these charts, don't worry. We're going to go over quite a few. Most of us know these, like pie charts, horizontal bar charts. I think we're all starting to see that stack chart a little bit more. So you can just kind of look through here. And then this is kind of a tool within Tableau that kind of helps you pick out what you can use. And so that'll be useful. Some that I think are kind of unique in here is a tree map. Most people don't know what a tree map is. And then we'll look at one, but it's this square one where it has a lot of sub-rectangles in it, and we'll talk about it more. And then, of course, it will do like a packed bubble or a word cloud. Now, if you're only doing a word cloud, I would not get into Tableau to do a word cloud. But if that is just something extra that you could use with your data, yeah, that would be fine to use here. There's a lot of tools out there that can do a word cloud a lot easier than Tableau, really. Okay, so let's kind of talk about what it looks like once we get in there. So as I was saying, Tableau is a tool designed for visualizations. It can create a lot of visualizations. It also focuses on the interactive visualizations. So you can set it up where you can allow things to be filtered and selected with different options, which means you can really set it up however you want so that you can have your audience view the data the way you want it to be viewed, or allowing the viewers to also interact with the data. So you can either let it be exactly what you want it to be published or allow them to have some interactions with it. So then here, this is what a Tableau looks like. This is their kind of base page, if you will. Down here across the bottom, we're going to see little options where you can see data source, sheet 1. This is a sheet area here in the center. And that is kind of like a spreadsheet in Excel, if you will. And that's where you're going to create the visualizations, or as you will see as we get into the public, they call them vizies or vizzes and or views. And this can have a really complex view or really simple view. And then this whole thing is one workbook. And then across the bottom, I know you can't see the icons here, but then we'll have one of those little squares is our dashboard. So the sheet has one view. The dashboard can have multiple views. The sheets can be very complex or very simple. Oh, and here's the dashboard view with a complex setup. So you can see there's like 3 views on this dashboard. Okay, so here we are with our vocabulary. So Tableau considers data variables to be either dimensions or measures. And this is what I struggled with the most when I was learning Tableau. Measures and numbers, that's pretty simple. Anything that's numerical value is a measure. Almost everything else is a dimension. And a dimension can be categorical data, that is text or string data. They call that string data. A location, a date, or Boolean values. Understanding the data, how Tableau looks at it, is important. Tableau will try to help you or force you into using certain visualizations based on what they think the data is, what the software is reading that data as. And it tries to predict what you might want or need. If Tableau sees two categorical variables, it will not understand how to build that visualization that is based on an XY axis. So we're still dealing with, just like a normal chart, if you will, or graph, it's an XY axis. So it won't understand how to build like a scatter plot across that. It doesn't know how the chart is supposed to select the points over the two categorical axes. It thinks of a scatter plot as numbers on the X and Y axis, and it's good to know this as it impacts what you can pick to chart. But you can also manipulate that, and we'll see that in here. And also, if you can't find your variables, you may want to look to see if they're in the wrong list, and then you might have to move them or recode them as the other variable. So you might find one in a measure and a dimension, or a dimension and a measure, especially date. Date can be in either, so depending on what it's needed to be looking at. Okay, so here's some data. It's pretty simple data, and we're gonna really look at this before we're getting into Tableau with a simple orders list from a company. You can see that it has a date, and this is a true date. Tableau would think of this as a date because it has the month, the year, and the day, not just a year. So a year in Tableau is not truly a date, it's just a whole number. And then we have the cells, and then we have a product category. So a lot of times, if you put the sales in there, it's going to automatically sum it up. And I will show you in its indicator that it's done that. We can see that, so you can know what it's doing. But also it will try to maybe suggest if you want it to do something else, we have to tell it to either look at it through the years or through a product category. So then once we got in there and get all the data in there, we can really manipulate something that is kind of looking like a spreadsheet, our Excel spreadsheet, and get it into a visualization. And then those can change in color and type and size and structure. Okay, so our data is really important in Tableau. So preparing our data, we want to make sure that it is we have removed anything that is an empty row or a non-data row. Make sure each row is complete, and remove totals and subtotals. And we need a block of data, and that's what works best for Tableau. And then we will eventually talk about Tableau Pivot, but not right now. But before we get in there, I do think this is a good term to learn, and I'll say it later, tidy data. So tidy data has to have, each variable has to have its own column, and each observation has to have its own row, and each cell has to have its own value. And you think that's pretty common, but this is what the difference is between what a human might want to be looking at and what Tableau really wants to be looking at. So we have Alabama here, and we have different types of energy. and then we have the years. So it's very easy for the human to kind of compare and contrast what's happening over these 4 years. But Tableau wants to have all of Alabama, then all the kind of commercial together, then all the years together, then all the emissions. And so that is the difference. And if you had anything in here that had a tilde or an NA or a question mark, that may throw Tableau off. It really just wants everybody to have all the pieces. Okay. So that is basically some overview of Tableau. Anybody have any questions at this point? Our chat is going.
Will we get the PowerPoint presentation? Like the PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's on the website.
Oh, it's on.
It's right here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So anything I use, you should have it. The PowerPoint's here, the data that we're going to manipulate is here, the links to the student platform or the instructor's platform or the public account, which that's what we're about to get in now. So you might just want to have this one running in the background is what I kind of do. And then we're going to have I opened the Tableau Public link from right here. And I'm going to sign in with my account. And I hope Zoom is seeing what we're looking at. If y'all are not with me, please tell me. Okay. And then you have to remember your password. What is that? Okay. So a lot of times you're going to land on these. They kind of identify the viz of the day, if you will. You don't have to really look at any of that. If you want, you can. And I'm just going to click on this little icon. That's going to let me have a drop-down menu so that I can be on my profile. I'm going to click on that. And this is what mine is going to be looking like. Yours will probably be empty all down here. And then we're going to create a viz. That's what they're going to ask us about. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Is anybody stuck? Can you get into the platform? Yeah. Okay. And I hope chat is doing well. Yes. Okay. Thanks, Jessica. And I'm going to click on the create a viz. And now we can see that we're going to be looking at our data. But you guys, I did a bad thing. I didn't download my data. Let me do that real quick. I'll do both real quick. And then I'm just going to grab that emissions wherever you have it stored and drag it in there. Could be on the desktop, could be in a folder for you. Close this up. And then we can see this. So what we have pulled in here on the side is we have state CO2. So we're going to talk about carbon monoxide emissions. And that's from 1990 to 2018. Then we're going to do a pivot later. So I have an example for us for doing that. And then we have state pop information there. So is everybody kind of in that setting? I'm going to go ahead and get our top one over here. This is the one we're going to be using the most, the state CO2 1990 to 2018. I just drag it in here in this area, anywhere where it says data. So let's talk about this screen a little bit so we can see that. I am not going to say update automatically because I want y'all to be able to see that for learning purposes, but you can click on this update automatically and then you would see the data fill in here. Up here at the top, we see our sheet come in. I'm going to check to make sure that our sheet is set up with headers across the top. And I want to make sure that it's read that way. So I'm going to right click on that and we can see that the check mark there is field name for the first row. So that read the right way. Then I'm going to come down here and look at this. It tells me the name. and it tells me the type of data that we have in here, but then we can also see the data in the columns to the left. So if I had a larger spreadsheet, it would still just have the rows keep going out to the right here. And then let's talk about this data. We can see this first one is our state data. Oh, yeah. Oh, here we are. Here on the website. Juliana, let me drop that in the chat for y'all if y'all need that. And here are the two files that we will need to use. Go ahead and download them both, and then just come over here, and the first time you open this, it will ask you to pull that data in, and then you can pull that data over. I'm going to give you a second, Juliana, so you can get back to us. I hope I'm pronouncing your name okay. So. Okay, all right. So then I'm just going to still look around. Yeah, you need help?
Sorry, I'm also having trouble with activating. It says
Oh, you can't get an account going?
no. So it says activated correctly and keeps this.
Oh, no, I don't think you need to do that. No, go back to the Tableau workshop. Yep. Click here. And did you try to click on this? And then say, yeah, so. Did you, oh, you should probably put that you're in the United States.
Oh, that's what.
Yeah, probably. I think that other countries have different probably. Let's see. Oh, this is just news. Yep. Okay, now you should be in. Yep. And then creative is. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. How are we doing up here now? Maybe that gave Juliana enough time to get us caught up too. So now that you've pulled that data in, then you drop that downloaded emissions file here, and then we've just pulled this one over to the center. And then we're looking around here. Okay, let's look at our columns here. So our first one says, our header says it's the CO2 state, and Tableau read it that way too. It put a little globe here. So if I click on that globe, it will see that it has got a geographical role down there. And if I move over, the check mark is by the state or the province. So it read that information correctly. This one is just the sector, the type of energy we're going to be looking at. And so it brought that in as text because it's got the ABC in the column there. And if I click on that, that's what it says. Remember, anything that's text is really considered a string data. And then the next one is our year. And remember, Tableau doesn't read a year, a single year as a date. So when we come in here, it has qualified this as a number, as a whole number, not a date and time, because we don't have the time. And we don't have a true date in Tableau, because remember, what do we need for a date? We need a day, a month, and a year to be a true date. Then the last one is our emissions number. And you can see we have decimals here, but if you go and look, it also realized that that's not a whole number, it's decimals. So look at everything that Tableau has got right. It's really guessed quite a bit. And so you just want to make sure that if Tableau is having a problem, it's probably because the data is not as clean as it should be. So that is the kicker there. Okay, now I'm going to click this Publish As up here in the corner. This is going to take us a second, or at least it does me usually. And then it's going to let me publish that. And maybe it's not going to let me do Publish As, maybe. Oh, no, there it is. So now I'm just going to name this emissions or whatever you want to name it. And I am going to check mark this show sheets as tabs. I'll show you that at the very end, so just bear with me on that. But after we get all the visualizations in, when you kind of publish it for your customer or your presentation or whatever you want to do with it, it'll allow the person to look at the sheets and the dashboard if you did not have this check marked, you would only be able to see the dashboard and the open web. If everybody got that. I don't ever do a password for the data because remember what I've said is if it's information that can be here, it's not confidential, then I don't need to worry about a password. I wouldn't be putting confidential information here, so then I choose not to use the password. You could if you wanted to, but then you would have to make sure whoever you wanted to view this would have that password. All right, I'm going to click publish, and it's going to take it a second. But then it moved me into the work area. And I'm going to wait until we kind of all say thumbs up for that, because different people will have different lag times. Okay, thanks. And I hope Zoom is not having problems too. And myself is still circling, so wait at least until I'm done circling. Let's see. Oh, I just had to move the mouse. How about y'all?
It's good.
Okay. Okay, Zoom, I hope you're with us. And let's talk about this page. Here's our work area that we were talking about in the PowerPoint, the sheet area. And this is a whole workbook. This whole thing is a workbook. And you can see down here at the bottom, our data source. So we could get back to the screen that we were just on if we wanted to, if we needed to move back to that place. We have our sheet 1. It's labeled here and here. And then we have the next one would be a new sheet. And then the next one would be a new dashboard. And then the last one is a new story. So really with this training, we're going to try to get everybody on a functional basic level. So we're not going to cover everything. And one thing we won't cover is stories. And stories really is kind of like maybe a PowerPoint and the website kind of had a baby. So it's really good with images and data. And if you wanted to play around in there, it's pretty easy to understand and work, especially once you get the basics of everything else. So let's go ahead and get ourselves set up here. Let's go ahead and rename this sheet 1. I'm going to right click rename, and I'm going to name this a bar. And I'm going to say okay. And you can see it changed this word to bar, and it labeled that one a bar down here. Now let's look at our tables too, so we can see what came in. Our data came in, and we have the CO2 sector at the top. We have the CO2 state. We have the CO2 year. And then we have the CO2 emissions. And then we got longitude and latitude generated here. So anything that is kind of italicized, and also clearly now they've added that parentheses generated, that means Tableau saw, oh, you have state information? I know what the state boundaries are. I'm going to pull that in. Maybe you have country boundaries. I know what country boundaries are. I'm going to pull that data in. So maybe if you're working in the state of Texas, I know what counties are. I can pull the county boundaries in. So depending on what you're doing with your data, you'll be able to manipulate it with that. And we'll see that in just a little bit more. Okay, so let's see if we can just try a simple bar graph. We're going to take the CO2. Oh, before we do that, I want to show you this little show me here. So that little show me, you have to push the little icon there at the top, the show me, and it will help you identify charts that you could do. And so if you highlight something over here, then it'll be more useful and it will make something more not grayed out. All these are grayed out. But then you also have to click this back. And we'll use it a little bit in the workshop. And I'm going to remember to tell you to drop it down, but I may forget to tell you to get away with it. If you want to remember that, that would be good. Okay, let's do a simple bar graph. I'm just going to take my CO2 state and I'm going to drag it to columns. And so Tableau is really kind of doing what it says it's going to do. It's going to try to figure out what to do with that data. So it's made a single row for every state. If I were to pull this down to the rows, it will make a single row for every state. let's go ahead and move that back to the columns. And then I'm gonna grab the CO2 emissions, and I'm gonna take that to the rows. So now you can see we have a chart here. And so essentially what we have done is we've added emissions and state to the charts. And we split up the data by state and gave it a number to sum up. So you can see it has automatically summed up the emissions, because remember, it was broken out in those different industries. So we had like commercial and industrial and other stuff. And so it just totaled it up for the whole state. Then let's go ahead and kind of look around at some of these other buttons that'll help us kind of organize our data here. We can use this little right click on the state, and we can do a sort here. And then we're going to change this drop down menu, and we're going to put it on field. And then I'm going to put it on descending. And then I can close this. So it did all of that. We can also use these icons up across the top of the sheet. So it's tried to pick out the most used activities and allows it to be here. So we can do ascending or descending here. And then we can also swap them. So now we have this information a little bit easier to read, right? We can see the state name label a little bit easier this way, as opposed to it being across the bottom. Okay, so what if we wanted to take this and add some more information to it? Maybe since we have that sector information, how do we add sector to this? We can just drag this sector to the columns, and it will break it up over the industries. Or you can also drag the sector to the sheet. So I'm just going to use this little back button right here, right above the data. And I'm going to do that again, but I'm just going to drag the sector to the sheet. And it will put that information in. And since we had it with multiple things, it automatically colorized it. And we can do that in a slightly different way too. I just want to make sure you can kind of see some of this. I'm going to drag the sector to color, and it will have it there. So that's two ways that we can kind of move different data around the sheet. Sometimes you can drop it here in the center. Sometimes you can use these little tools here that's kind of between our data. And then you can always, if you make a mistake or don't know what you did, you can always click back so you can have that information. Okay, let's take another sector and drag it to the columns again. And it will break that back out with the color with all the charts. So let's also go ahead and look at the CO2 sector and do a sort there. So I'm going to do a right click, and I'm going to do a sort. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before, field, and then descending, because we want to look at the most. And here we are. So one thing that Tableau does all the time is it will pull it in alphabetically. And so if you just always want to sort for the most or least or whatever you need to for your data, just know that you have to do that sort. I don't really like that it always alphabetizes things, because most of the time you're never looking at data just because it's alphabetized. Or it's not the most useful way to do that. So now that we've got this all stretched across, we still have quite a bit of data, right? And it's so overwhelming that we have so many of the 50 states displayed. So then we can use a filtering process. So let's drag the state to this filter box here in the center. And then it's going to open this little kind of window where we can really filter. And I'm going to untoggle this And so we can see we have 4 filter options here. I apologize, let me mute that. And so under general, we can see, we can just pick what we want if we wanted to do that. We can select from it, we can search for that data. And then I'm gonna go ahead and untoggle that. Under wildcard, you can see I can have exact matches or have it contains. So depending on what you're doing with your data, maybe you're digging through a whole bunch of data and you need to search for men versus women. That might be a situation here. Then we have a conditional. So if I wanted to say search by a certain field for this amount, I could do that here. And so then the last one is a top bottom. So maybe I wanted to see just the top portion of my data or just the bottom portion of my data. And that's the one we're going to use today. We're going to go by field. We're going to select, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have the field emissions. We're going to make sure that that says 15 here. And we're going to take the top 15 of the field, the emissions. And I'm going to say, okay. Uh-oh, what happened here? Did those work? Mine did not work. All right, I'm going to go back and see if I can get that to fix fast. Oh, sorry, that's not a filter. Oh, I feel 15. Oh, I think my thing is. Okay. Oh, I think this is too far down. Okay. Okay. It did it this time. I don't know why. It didn't do it a minute ago. Okay, so here we are. We're looking at this information. We have the most at the top. We have it sorted by the sector for the CO2 emissions and the states that have the most emissions are at the top. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. And that did not work for me. Look at that. Okay, because it didn't filter that. That is so funny. Edit filter. It's supposed to only have 15. That is weird. Well, if y'all's is working, I'm gonna just keep going. But
Yeah, it's working for me.
Huh?
It's working for me.
Okay. I don't know why it's not working here, but okay. It's supposed to just have the first top 15 there. Sorry about that. Okay. I am gonna maybe clear this up just a bit. I think it's fine. I just wish that filter is working. It did not work for you either, Juliana. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to play around with that for a second and see what is happening here. Choose the sectors. I'm going to look one more time and see. We're going to use the top. That's what I want. We want to say 15. We're going to say coefficients. I'm going to clear my sheet and do that a little fast. And so you can see this, clear the sheet. And I'm just going to drop that information in there real quick so that we can get it back in there. So I'm going to drag to the rows and the sector. Oh no, the emissions. That's what we need. I think that's what. Let me see real quick here. Oh yeah. Here. Then we're going to turn around and swap it. And then I'm going to do descending real quick. And then let's see if we can get it to filter this way. I'm going to do the Eight to the filter, to the top. We don't have it colorized, but we can see if this works. If it makes it clean. There we go. And then now we can take the sector to the color if we want to. Have it stacked, or we could even have it broken out in the details. Yeah, and do that. At least this part is right now. That did do that. Let's do. Oh, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna remove this one and put the sector here. That did the same thing. I swear the sector. Well, I'm gonna keep going because I'm not sure why that is not doing the right thing there. Okay, so we'll leave this as a bar chart and we'll go ahead and get a new sheet, and we're gonna rename that to the tree map. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the sector to the text. Now we wouldn't often do this movement, but I just want you to be able to see it. It creates labels. So if you move sector to text, that's what you're really doing, is creating labels. And then we'll move the emissions to the size. And then this is a tree map. Now tree maps are usually used in business or finance. And it's really useful if you have a lot of subsectors in it. And sometimes you're going to see this on infographics. And so you can use this. I think it's an okay chart. It's not my favorite chart. Let's say if I, instead of wanted circles and not a tree map, I can tell Tableau how to do that different by using this here. Instead of leaving it on automatic where it selects it, I can change this to circles. And it will put it over here into circles. Now this chart is really called a hacked bubble chart. But if I go ahead and tell it back to text here, then it is kind of in a word cloud. And then I can also have that color added there. So I can drag sector to the color and it will have it. The nice thing about this is that Tableau is going to label the same color with the same thing across all the sheets. So that when you're pulling your data together, visually you can see that electric power is always going to be the orange color. And you can make those colors be different if you need to, but it's really useful to your readers. Okay, I'm going to rename this and make it a word cloud. Say okay. And then let's go ahead and get a new sheet. And let's see. So while we're here, let's go ahead and talk about, so we have been able to build some charts and see what Tableau can do, but have we been getting what we wanted to? I'm going to look back on the bar chart real quick. So while we have it organized where it has the most numbers of emissions at the top, and these are the top 15 in the states, these are some of our biggest populations as well. So we may want to normalize for our population. So for us to do that, we're going to have to get some more data. So let's go back to our data source. And we're going to get that state pops one. And we're going to drag it over here. We're not going to put it on top of the one that we're already using. We're just going to drag it in the area. So I'm going to pull that over there. And I can put it anywhere I want to over here. And so what is happening now is it's looking at data from the state CO2 1990-2018 to the state pops. And you can see that it's trying to relate this data some way. And we're going to tell it how to do that. And you can see right now it doesn't know what to do. And that's why it has the warning symbol there. So under here, you can see it's telling us about this relationship. So this is a relationship, not a joins. If you dropped it right on top of it, it would be a joins. And you can learn more about joins here on the screen. But that puts it all the data into one spreadsheet, if you will, where this keeps the two spreadsheets separate, but in Tableau. So here under state CO2 1990, 2018, I'm going to look and see if I can find the state, the CO2 state. Then I have the equals, and I'm going to find the state over here. So this is population state. And so now it's looking at that data together. Now I'm going to add one more field there. And I'm going to look for the CO2 year. And then I have the equals. And I'm going to tell it to look at the population year. So now it knows that this is how I'm going to relate this data together. That the states go together and the years go together. So it's CO2 state and population state, and CO2 year and population year. Now we can go ahead and update this information. Remember, you can always have the automatically on. I just like to show you this as it's coming across. I can look at all of this, make sure that that came in the way I wanted to, like we had before, check my headers. That all came in. If I click here, you can see it tells me what sheet I'm in, what types of fields are here, and then the data is starting to show across here. If I clicked over here, it would show me the other data. If I clicked on the relationship, it will show me what I've married. So now I'm going to go back to sheet 3, and let's hope it goes because it's going to have to publish. So now I'm on sheet 3, and I just out of precaution's sake, I'm going to go ahead and say publish one more time, so that if it breaks, I can come back to a place where we will know where I was at. Okay, so now what we're really wanting to look at is a normalization for population. But when we got back in here in sheet 3, you can see here's our data up here. So remember we had the state CO2 1990, 2018. I can click on that little chevron, and that's the information we had before. Now we have the state populations, and I can see that spreadsheet as well. So we can work with all of that information. Remember the italicized is it generated it itself. And it's brought in the latitude and longitude because both these have states. So now we're going to do a per capita calculation, and we have to calculate that. So if you go to CO2 emissions and you right click on that, then we're going to click create, and we're going to be under a calculated field. And then a box comes up. Now I'm going to go ahead and rename this as normalized emissions. And then I'm going to put my cursor down here in the box. So let's talk about this. We're labeling this equation. It has already pulled in the CO2 emissions because that's what we started with. That's the data we clicked on to get to this created thing. Now I'm going to do any kind of math in here that I need to. So this is just like creating a formula in Excel. So if you're not used to that, you can kind of think about that. So it has the first information there, and I'm just going to click that slash. So that would be divided by, and you can even see that it says, oop, you have an error here because you don't have something to divide that by. And so then we're going to make sure we're going to do the population. So I'm going to go ahead and press space, pop, and it should come in population estimate. And I'm going to click on that and say, okay. And now it has created a new category over here for us, a new measure, if you will. And you can see on your screen, hopefully, there's a little equals out in front of that number. And that just means that it's a calculated field. Okay, so to look at this, I already have the normalized emissions highlighted on Windows. You're going to use the control, and then I'm going to highlight the CO2 state. And if you're on a Mac, you're going to use your command. And then with those two highlighted, we can look at a show me again a little bit. And you can see what is populated over here. We can look at a bar chart. We can look at a pie. We can look at a tree. We cannot do a line from the data that we have here. Let's go ahead and do the bar. And then I'm going to close that show me again. And then I'm going to sort this like we have before. I'm going to descend that easy thing there. And we have our summary at the top. And so you can see that now we have it set up and Wyoming is at the top. Now, did we do all that information just so that we could get Texas out of the top? No, it's still in the top, but it is showing you per population how much emissions each state is. So those bigger states are not always the worst. They just have a lot of population in them. And so we have to think about that. Okay. So let's go ahead and drag a sector on top of it, and we can have that stacked bar chart that we had before. I'm going to rename this to stacked. Okay. And then let's go ahead and do a line chart. I'm going to grab a new one. I'm going to rename it right now. I'm going to just call it line. Say okay. And let's use a year for the horizontal axis, which is really going to be like our timeline, if you will. I'm just going to grab the CO2 year, but you could use either year. And I'm going to put it in the columns. And you'll see a timeline like we normally think of a timeline. And then we're going to use the normalized emissions, and we're going to put it here. And then you can see this is the normalized emissions over the years that we have the data for. And you can see that it summed up the normalized emissions again. We didn't tell it to do that. We only have the one line here, so it's just looking at all the emissions in one line. But if we wanted to break that up over sector or state, we could do that. Which do you all think might be a good way to do that? Does anybody have a guess? Or wants to try? Well, I think we might do sector more than a state. State has 50 lines. We would have 50 lines, or we could have the 5 or 6 that we have in sector. So I'm just going to grab the sector to the center, and then it's going to colorize them and put the 5 items there. And whenever it does put a chart together and it needs to have a label or a key, it will automatically pull it out to the side for you. And if you whatever didn't necessarily want these to be colorized, I think you can drop them in detail and they'll all be blue again. I kind of like the color. There, I'll just leave them here. Okay, I'm going to leave that line there, and let's finally do a map. I'm going to rename this sheet to map and say okay. And then I'm going to drag the CO2 state to the center. And for whatever reason, it automatically gives us this, what they call a symbol map. If you go under the show me, You can see this is a symbol map. And it just has the big circles of the amount of emissions for this state. Or you can have the filled in map, if you will. I kind of like the filled in map a little bit more, but we'll do both today. So let's just go ahead and move to the filled in map. And then I'm going to close this. And then you have to use this little arrow and this little move around thing if you want to move the map around. I kind of like it centered. So you're going to see me do that a little bit more. Okay. Let's do the normalized emissions to color. And then we'll talk about this. So what is happening here is when you have one dimension, you have a scale. And when you have, I'm sorry, I'm telling you that backwards. When you have dimensions, yes, when you have dimensions, you have multiple colors. When you have a measure, it's one color or the scale. So if you think if you have one number or multiple numbers, that would be the difference there. Okay, and so then I'm just going to use this little tool that we haven't used yet today. And it's called duplicate, because I'm going to show you how you can manipulate that symbols map a little bit. I'm going to rename this one that is map 2, if you will, to symbols, just so I can remember which one it is when we get to the dashboard. I'm going to change this back from the show me back to the symbols. So now we have the dots, and technically we just have the total sums of the emissions here. You can see the normalized emissions. But if we go ahead and drag sector to color, then it's going to drop those circles in with all of those. Now they're kind of hard to see, but I'm going to go ahead and pull that size out a little bit more. Let's see if I can pull that size down. Yeah, so under size, if you take this little mark, you can move it up a little bit. I think I'll put it about 60, and then you can start to see the colors a little bit better. So you can see different states have more red or orange, or there's blue here, or Alaska has red and blue. So depending on it, that's just moving that value out for it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and leave that one that way and really kind of talk about what we've kind of learned, and then we'll move into a dashboard. So we pulled in data over here in 2 different sheets. We've manipulated it across in a different way, a bar, a word cloud, a stacked bar, a line, a map, and then the symbols map. And we've used this here in the center. We can leave it set at automatic, or we can change the shape or different kinds of pies or charts here. We've used our details and our colors and our labels to manipulate these tools down here. So now I'm going to go ahead and not get a new sheet, but go to the middle one and get a new dashboard. And then we're going to put those all together. Does anybody have a question so far? This would be a good kind of spot for that. Okay. So here, let's look over here. Now we don't have our data anymore. We have our sheets that we just created. But before we get to that, let's look at the size. So right now, it's only letting me use the white area here instead of all the area. So it has it set to this desktop, and it's fixed. But if you just change that to automatic, then it'll let you use the whole sheet. Now, there's reasons why you might have that. Maybe you're really going to share this information, and most of the time you're going to be looking at it on an iPad, or most of the time you're going to be looking at it on a phone. So depending on what you were doing, you could change that back to the fixed rate and then pick which one you really needed to. A desktop browser, you want to embed it on a blog, so maybe it's not going to take up the whole sheet. You want to look at the full screen. I swear they had a phone in here. Oh yeah, here's an iPad. I think they do have a phone if I look real quickly, but maybe not. Laptop browser, which is smaller than a desktop browser usually. But I'm going to go back and put that back to automatic for what we're looking at now. And I typically work in this automatic, and then whenever, depending on what I'm doing, if it's a presentation at another place, I kind of check out what that place is going to allow me to use. You know, will it be sitting on a website? Will I be really looking in Tableau on the public side here, and then set it up to what I think would be most useful to everybody. Okay, so now we can pull these in. I'm just going to grab, let's do the line map. I'm just going to put it in the center, but then it's going to take up everything. So I'm just going to grab that map one, and I'm going to put it across the bottom. You can put yours wherever you want. You don't have to mirror me. Then I think I'm going to do the stacked one, and I put it right next to the line. And you can drop whatever you want in here. I kind of like the map to be over 2 squares, because if not, the data is really kind of small. And the line and the charts, the bar chart or a stack chart, is fine to be sharing the screen. Now I could go ahead and pull more things over here if I wanted to, or I can just leave this here. What I do want to make sure is, if I want this to be manipulated from the outside, I have to tell it that I want it to do that. So I will click on the map again because I want it to be manipulated. And I'm going to click on this little use as a filter. I'm going to fill that in. I'm going to do that on all the charts. And we can see that action here in the back end, if you will, of Tableau Public. I'll just click on Texas real quick, and we can see that it impacts the other two.
Can't get my
Your filter to work?
Well, no, my charts aren't stacking like yours are.
Okay. Well, you can just move those around too. Let me show you how to do that. Just grab this little tab, and I'm going to move mine on the other side of the line, and I'll move the line over. That map, though, sometimes is a pain, so you have to kind of get it to go across the whole thing.
Okay, yeah, it's looking better.
Okay. I'm going to clear this filter now, just by clicking undo. I might have to do undo twice because I moved things around. And then, yeah, okay, let me get that. There we go. I clicked it out. You have to make sure that when you're in the Juliana, when you're in the piece that you're wanting to work on, it will have that little gray bar there. So I've clicked into the map, and I have to make this filter usable. If it's not filled in, it's not usable. So let's go back over here to this one. Now the gray bar is up here, and I want to make sure this is usable. Did that work? Do we think? Yes. Okay, good. So now I'm going to go ahead and say I'm ready to look at it on the other side. I'm going to publish it one more time. Then I'm going to go and click this X. Y'all don't panic. We're just going to the front side of Tableau Public. But I think, to me, this is very not intuitive. And so I don't want to close that. I've been trained that that means close the whole thing. And that's not what it really means. So now we're on the front side of that, and I can see all of my stuff. Oh, we forgot to name the dashboard. Sorry about that, guys. So I can look at the bar, or the word cloud, or the stacked, or the line, or I can go to my dashboard and see the 3 that I've pulled around. And now, as a user, I mean, I'm not really signed into my area. Well, technically I am, but even if anybody was on the open web, they could see this. And let's say I just wanted to isolate Alaska. I can click on that, and it's going to impact the other 2. Oh, and here, to get back, you have to click back, and it will unhighlight that. Whoops, that got big there for a second. I don't want it to be that big. But that's just my scrolling in my mouse. So you can manipulate this any way you want. If you want these to be manipulated, you could do that. you can, get this all from these. If we're looking at the top here, let's go ahead and click edit. We would be back into the place we just came from. The other thing is right below this, we have some details. We could name this something here. Let's see, I'm gonna say emissions spring 2024. And then I can describe it more. If I wanted to identify, hey, something else inspired me to create this, I could link that here. Or if I wanted to put this on my website with the workshop, maybe I could put the external link here and then drop it over here. And so then I can make this link back to my data. Even though this is a static picture of that, it could link back to my information here on Tableau. And then I'd say save changes, and then that would close, and we'd be there. I can go ahead and make some different settings here. I'm going to click under this little gear, if you will, and this is where you can show, allow others to make copies or not. And I always have that off, and then show, and there you go. And then you can star them or share them, whatever you want to do. Okay. So that is basically what we would do here. We could rename our dashboard if y'all want to go back in and name that something else. Or we can now move on to some other information. I thought it might be fun to look at some Netflix data, and we could play around with that. Or we could talk about Tableau Pivot. Does anybody have a preference? We're at 310. If not, we might just look at the Netflix data and pull that into a new viz. If we did that, I would just click this, my profile. You can see here is the one I just published. Now, I don't know if y'all can see your picture yet, but sometimes that takes just a little bit of time for it to be visible, but it would look something like the ones over here. And so if that doesn't show up, I don't even think it's over 24 hours. I think it's just like in a couple of hours it would be published there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about Netflix data if we want to do that. Or we could talk about clean data too. Have y'all ever heard of that tidy data information? You really need to clean up your like no blanks, no subfolders, no subtotals, all that. We can kind of talk about that.
But what if you can't fill it in? So
You gotta take it out. So like maybe in this data, let's say I had all the data for every state, but maybe Utah didn't send all their emissions for every sector. Then I might take Utah out so that I could have a clean data. So then I would have to make that note that this is for the United States without Utah's data, but I would still be able to use that data. And let's see if we can think about that in applications that kind of apply to us. Let's say you're collecting data from an interview. If somebody just says, I don't know, you would have to either get them to answer that, or, like in a survey, a lot of times people will not answer ethnicity or race because they're trying to be,
well, like for my position right now, we handle work orders. So not all of them are finished when I need to pull the data. So I have open work orders. So how would I handle that? Like I couldn't exclude those because I need to say this is how many we did for the month.
Yeah, so then maybe Tableau is not the way to display that information. That might be a case, or you could, I do a lot of data like that for the year or for each month, for like how many people we help with walk-ins and consultations and stuff like that. And we always in our department give until the 10th. And then if you've not filled it in by the 10th, it's like, whoop, that didn't happen. And maybe, I don't know if y'all have a leeway of that in saying, like if you don't have an order form completed by a certain day, then you probably are not filling that order, I
Well,
would think.
it might be like, we're still waiting on parts, so that's why they haven't closed it, or,
Okay,
you know.
and you don't ever have a drop dead date of now you can't, you know,
We leave the work order open until those parts come in and they fix it.
okay.
That
So,
way we can track on how long it actually took to finish that.
okay. So, now Tableau, I don't think is good over time. It wants the data. It doesn't want to
Yeah, you
measure
can't-
time for
yeah,
you.
Can't skip any kind of blank.
Yeah, but it could do, you know, we have 10 open and 20 completed this month. I think that it would still look that, you would have to clean up your data to be open and closed. I think you would have to add another column where you would have, this is like the year and this is a true date. So anything that had a true date would be maybe completed. Anything that just had a year would be an open, and you would have to treat the data that way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and look at maybe the Netflix data if we want to do that. It's kind of fun. I'm just gonna grab the Netflix data that I had already downloaded and I'm gonna drop it in here. I'm just gonna start with a new viz. And sometimes to me, if I learn something, then I do it again pretty soon, then it helps me kind of reinforce it. So here we have several items here, several data sheets, if you will. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull over, or let's see here. I'm kind of looking at what we're looking at maybe here. Oh, I totally forgot to show y'all that. I might just open a new Tableau real quick. Y'all just stay there and watch me do this real quick because I want y'all to know this. So some data that Tableau has allowed you to share or learn from. If you click under this learn icon just on the same screen, I just didn't want to close that and get a new screen. Then you can kind of look through here and see some different data, but also sample data, and that's where I got the Netflix data, so you could go ahead and use that straight from there, or my own that I had already put on there. So then I put that in here. And so, let's see. I'm going to pull the first one over, the Netflix titles. And then I'm going to look and see what this data is telling me, because I haven't really looked at this data yet. And so with it I'm going to make sure that the first row has the names, the headers for the first row. It does. I'm going to update now, but again, you can be doing update automatically. And then it's telling me the minutes, seasons, type, title, the date added. So that is a true date, and the date released, a rating for, like the TV rating for that, a description of that, and then the show ID. But what do we see in our data?
Missing.
Yeah, so a lot of that is going to be missing. So we may not be able to do something that is pretty good with minutes or seasons because we have some missing data. But we can manipulate the rest of the data. Okay, now I'm going to pull in the cast. And remember, I'm not going to do a join, so I'm going to do a relationship. I'm dropping it anywhere in the white spots. And what is it showing me here? Oh, it has cast and the show ID. Well, we know that this one also had the show ID. So that is what we're going to marry with these. So this relationship will be based on show ID and show ID in the second one. And it even pulled it across and already knew that. So we didn't even have to fix it. We didn't have an error in our relationship. So that's really good. I'm going to go ahead and pull these others over. Make sure all those relationships work. So I'm going to grab the category and just drop it over here in the white spot. I'm going to pull the countries. When I'm doing that, I'm also making sure that this is showing up the right way. And then I'm gonna do directors. So none of our relationships have a error message. So we should be good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna publish. And gonna name it. I'm just gonna name it Netflix. Y'all can name it whatever you want to. Gonna take a minute for it's really extracting that data. So sometimes Tableau is really fast and sometimes it's a little slow. And so you may want to think about that depending on what you're doing. You want to use Tableau Public or Tableau Desktop. Tableau Desktop is a lot faster because it's not sending it to the cloud and then pulling it back in and information like that, and you're not working online technically. But then it's only on your desktop too. So there's pros and cons about both. Let's see how long this takes. How's y'all's doing? Is that coming through?
It's thinking.
It's still thinking, okay. No, wait just a little bit longer and see what we get here. Well, while we're waiting, is anybody gonna get to use Tableau maybe for their work in a class this year? Or is it just something interesting that y'all wanted to learn?
That's interesting.
Just interesting, yeah. Cause you start seeing all that data visualization, like even just if you're browsing online or Instagram, you can see people are starting to use data in different ways. And I was like, wow. I'll give this a second more and then see what's happening here. It is pulling, 5 things across. I'll give it a minute more, but sometimes it kind of gets stuck. Okay, I'm gonna try to get out of here, but sometimes it kind of breaks it. So let's see what happens. I'm gonna cancel and try again. I'm gonna refresh here and see if that helps. Heat. All right, now I'm gonna try one more time too. Did y'all get it to go?
I just canceled that and retry it again.
Yeah. How about Zoom? How are y'all doing? Did it go for y'all? Maybe because we're in a different location. Look at one of my old ones, maybe in the fall. I'm gonna give it at least until 3. I think it's probably just within seconds now, but who knows? Got overwhelmed. When I see that little, this one, the little blue icon, I keep thinking, oh, it's very close. If we get to 3 minutes again, and it doesn't, we can maybe choose to look at something else if we want to. I do have that option to kind of look at a pivot, but I think it will get stuck again. We were just going to kind of recreate some of our charts with this new data. Maybe let's see if I can. Maybe I'll let that kind of run in the background, and then back over here under my profile, we can just look at the, here's my Netflix from the fall of 2023. I can probably drop this into the chat, but it'd probably be pretty hard for y'all to get to this. You know, type this, so we can look at it as long as, and we can just kind of look at some of the options that we were going to look at there. And so we have a bar chart with all the different genres listed with the most at the top. So this data shows that we have the most international movies really. And then we have a cloud, word cloud here with the international movies. And then since we had a true date in this data, it has a day, a month, and a year. It allowed us to kind of look at this line and see as people were adding in things, we can see that. And we know what month and year is here because we have the date and the month and the year. But we didn't put the date in this chart. We just did the month and the year, as opposed to just a single spot on the year as a total. Now remember, this data was collected at the end of December 2019. So I guess they had already added in January, but we don't have any other data past that 2020. And then the last chart is telling us how many different countries contribute to the Netflix data. So this is the different TV shows or movies coming from around the world. Clearly, the United States has the most titles from this time period, but we can see that we have lots of different countries participating in some kind of show or documentary that has also been loaded, with Britain, as you can see, being kind of a darker blue-green, and India being a darker blue-green, and then the rest just kind of shading out into that kind of aqua, if you will. Let me see if mine finally came through. Mine did not come through. Okay, so we're at 3:30. Let's go ahead, and if anybody had any questions, I'm sorry this is not working. We also have this workshop video down here. It's from last year, but it will have the Netflix data embedded. If you wanted to take that and get the Netflix data in there and then do the steps with that video, you're more than welcome to do that. Some different information that is around here. You can see some additional Tableau learning. I try to keep all of my data here so that if you wanted to play around with the data or review the PowerPoint, you have that information. Let's see. Oh, I know a lot of y'all are coming in from graduate school, and so I think this one will go directly to the award tracker, and if you wanted to add that information in, let's see if that's working. Well, do we think the internet is working down here at all? Nope, it is. That's interesting. That didn't work either. Okay. That link is not good. Let's see all of it. Do we think are y'all in Chrome? Maybe Chrome is having a problem. I did get, oh, there we go. That finally went. So this is probably previous because we're in the middle of it. So you could probably find mine just down here at the bottom, or maybe not. Mine kind of got added late, so I'm not sure mine got onto this. Yep. Maybe not. Sorry about that. A lot of times you can come here and get credit for that if you're a graduate student. Okay. Then, if anybody has a question we kind of want to cover, I'm happy to explore those with you. We're kind of scheduled for the next 30 minutes. We don't have to stay the next 30 minutes, but if you wanted to explore a different question, I'm happy to do that. And if not, that's fine too. Then I'm gonna turn off the recording and stop sharing. Zoom, y'all are okay? Stop sharing. I think it won't even let me stop recording.